2 weeks ago, I told you that most customer success managers never become customer business partners, and that it's not a talent problem, but more of a problem of exposure. Also, that the customer business partner is a talent capability that sits across a team, generally not within one individual in a team. And the five specific experiences that separate customer business partners from non customer business partners are things that most people never get given by accident. And I stand by every word of that. I actually am part of the Success Lab community, which is founded by Omid Razavi, and regularly he brings together leading companies and progressive leaders to work through what AI means in customer facing teams at enterprise scale. And I think that's a great place to start to look at understanding the art of the possible, even as you head up an earlier stage business. Because if you're serving large enterprise customers at some point in your scaling journey, this is going to be relevant and it's a great place to learn. Last week, unfortunately, I missed the live event that was hosted by BCG in London, but there are some really good lessons to be had there, particularly because they hosted senior leaders from companies like Lloyd's, Coutts, Octopus Energy, Sky, and Marks and Spencer. And thankfully, Omid was kind enough to send me a write up of the key findings from the session. And I thought that really set up the scene perfectly for what I wanted to cover today, which is not should we use AI in customer success, but rather what AI leaves for humans to do. And whether the profiles we've been building CS teams around for years still make sense given this context of AI and the role that it's playing in enhancing our interactions with customers to drive a better customer experience. And reading through these notes really gave me a clearer answer than when I was going in. I had a feeling for what I thought should be included, but in practice, there's far more to be considered here. So today I'm going to take the four customer success profiles that we looked at in the competency model. So that's the troubleshooter, the operator, the strategic thinker, and the orchestrator, and tell you exactly what AI is taking from each one and what it is handing back. So if you're a founder, this changes what you should be hiring and paying for. And if you're a customer success manager or a customer success leader, it also changes how you should be building your career or your team. So let's go into those details. Let's start with the troubleshooter role because that's actually where the AI conversation always begins and typically where it ends as well. And the troubleshooter, if you recall, is a fast, reliable, reassuring profile. When something breaks, they fix it, and your customers love them. That is exactly the work that AI is starting to do already. So things like summarizing calls, drafting replies, routing tickets, resolving some of the routine stuff on its own. In the past, I've actually sat in a number of the Success Lab sessions where practitioners from large companies talk through what they've actually done to implement some of this. Not the polished version, but actually the real stakes that happen within the company. And most of the conversations come back to the same blockers, which are poor quality of data, fragmented systems, and the fact that AI cannot consistently access information that sits across wide ecosystems of data and systems that don't talk to each other. And so companies that are rushing to implement some sort of AI solution without looking to fix the fundamental things that sit beneath it are not seeing the returns on investment that they're hoping to see. And company after company has said that the technology was ready before the foundations were, and that's what's limiting the ability to deploy at full impact. But what does that actually mean for the troubleshooter role? If assuming that companies are going to overcome some of these data and system blockers, the reality is that this troubleshooter role is actually compressing. The easy tickets or the routine tasks, any sort of first line noise that you're likely to come across, that volume is going to drop for human beings. And what's left is probably the smaller and harder things to solve. The complex cases, the ones that have three different systems and two different teams involved to resolve. Or when an escalation happens where the customer's furious and needs a human who can read the tone in their voice, not just the words in a ticket and the broader context. So if you're a troubleshooter or if you're heading a team that mostly does this troubleshooter role, then the reality is that the easier part of the job is actually gone. And what remains is sharper judgment than it used to do. And that means a level of complexity that is probably that may have been a part of the job is now going to become the job of the human. And that obviously will shift whether it's the profiles, the skills of that troubleshooter role. So, in short, the troubleshooter role doesn't disappear, but it changes and it becomes a much more complex problem solving role than it has been in the past. Next, let's look at the operator role, our second profile. So, operators we know are the people who run a tight ship. They're really the core of what most customer success teams that are performing well are doing at the moment. So, they make sure that onboarding flows and happens well, that time to value is at an optimal level, that the quarterly business review cadences are respected, that we're tracking health scores and changes in the health scores, that we're tracking renewals, and essentially that everything is in order, on paper at least. This is where AI genuinely can augment rather than replace. So the fact is, it can analyze big data, support intelligence, look at usage patterns, identify engagement signals, and pull out the points that are worth raising in a review. And that can save an operator hours of QBR prep. What it cannot do is actually facilitate the room, translate what that data means for this specific customer and the humans representing that customer, how they show up, how to drive that plan forward after the meeting ends. There is a piece of technology that I'm actually building with my co-founder, Cyril Coste. And that tool, which is in its early stages, plays into this directly because it surfaces risks and opportunity signals that an operator might otherwise miss buried in the noise of the day to day and sharpens the judgment that they already bring to the room. For an operator who's watching this, AI is going to give you a lot of insights from the data, but you still have to read the room. And the card for this profile says that dashboards look great until a champion leaves, and then nobody who knew actually cared. So AI can narrow that blind spot, but it cannot fully close it on its own. The human judgment component remains absolutely critical to this operator role. Now let's pivot to our strategic thinker. This third profile is where I want you to slow down with me, because this is where the real risk typically lives. The strategic thinker understands the customer's business and not just in relation to the product. What is the board worried about? What is the CFO measuring? And what in their strategy is actually shifting? And here AI is genuinely useful because it can pull together things like public filings, news, leadership changes, earnings signals faster than any human can reach for manually. This is the information that I, in the past, had not necessarily always taken the time to look at. And when I didn't, it had drastic consequences for relationships that I thought were healthy crashing down. And this is the work that I and my teams used to do manually. What you can now do with AI is accelerate the time to insight if you're looking for the right things. But let's be careful and focus on a very important point. Speed is not the same thing as judgment. A leadership change doesn't necessarily mean anything on its own, nor does a quarterly earnings forecast that's been missed. However, what does this mean for the customer's priorities? Will they stay the same or will they change? And how will that impact the relationship that we're currently managing? That interpretation only happens if the person who's reading the data already has the business acumen to know what a leadership change signals inside a large organization. This is usually the invisible churn risk that I talk about constantly. When the relationship feels healthy, when all the dashboards are green, and yet you still lose the customer because no one connected the dots between an organizational signal that was sitting completely outside of any internal system and the risk that sits inside the customer relationship. And I want to name that trap directly because I see founders fall into it often. An AI research tool will bring you great inputs, but the judgment still has to live in a person who understands both the customer's world and your own. Now for the fourth profile, the orchestrator. And I'm not going to hedge at all on this one because the orchestrator is all about bringing people together. Internal, external, executive, frontline. They know who needs to be in the room, in what order, and what each person needs to hear to move forward. This is the profile, in my opinion, that AI touches the least. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. Yes, it can help with prep and research. What it cannot do is read the culture of a customer organization that has never been written down anywhere. Sense that the CFO and the head of product have not spoken in 3 months and that this is exactly why the deal is stuck. Or adjust its tone in real time because it noticed someone in the room just went quiet. Most of the real work here happens before the meeting even begins. The alignment, the sequencing, the groundwork that stops it from becoming yet another meeting that nobody needed. The work is invisible, but it is entirely human. If you take one thing away from this video, please take this. Orchestration is the rarest of the four profiles, and it's just about to become even more valuable. Now let's put this all together and these four roles that we've reviewed in the context of AI. As AI eats the volume in the troubleshooter and operator work, something interesting happens to the other two. Strategic thinker judgment and orchestrating as a skill become the whole game of customer success at impact. And this is not a new argument from me. It's the same one I've made for the last few weeks about these five formative experiences. What AI does is add urgency to it. The market is about to have a lot fewer reasons to pay for reactive troubleshooting and process management. It's about to have a lot more reasons to pay for the judgment and the critical thinking that sits in the orchestration that build a real customer business partner. And let me repeat this again. Talent without exposure was always just potential, but now this potential in the market is actively shrinking the easy path to build a career on. If you're a founder, please stop evaluating and hiring customer success purely on the troubleshooter and operator competencies. It's precisely the part of the job that is likely to get automated the fastest. Look for strategic thinker judgment and orchestrator skills instead. And be honest with yourself about whether your organization is actually giving people the chance to build those skills. And if you're in customer success as a practitioner, please note this is not a threat to your job. It's your best argument yet for investing in the two hardest and less automatable skills that you have. AI just made that case for you, and suddenly, if you play your card right, you have just become all the more valuable as a team. That is where I think AI actually leaves the four profiles. Two are compressed and two are more valuable than ever. If you are in or around Cambridge on the 23rd of July, I'm taking this exact conversation live to the Cambridge Customer Success Meetup. The same four profiles, the same AI question, but this time you get to push back live in the room. It's going to be an active discussion with practitioners, reviewing, poking holes, and reinventing what customer success truly looks like in the age of AI. Drop me a comment and tell me which of the four profiles your own team is most exposed to right now. I do read everyone, and I'll see you in the next one.